Joining us on the line right now to talk about the election coverage, where things stand, Dana Bash from CNN. Hello, Dana.
Hi, how are you this morning?
It's good to have you. You're on with Brian and Larry. Okay, let's talk about what CNN has planned, because you guys are, I know you've been doing your dress rehearsals. That's what you do just before the big election. How's it going?
It's going okay. It's going okay. Look, I mean, I know that there has been, questions about how much attention there's been on this election. I think in part because of what we're seeing, that voters are so disaffected. But the reality is we do have a lot of neck-and-neck races. There's a lot of drama. Now, the weekend, looked like Republicans were picking up momentum in some of those neck-and-neck races. But, there's a lot of wild cards. There's Kansas, which has, of course, a Republican incumbent who should not be in trouble at all. As I mentioned, it's Kansas. But Independent is doing well. There could be runoff from Louisiana and Georgia and Alaska, as anybody's guess, as to what really happens there, because it's very hard to poll there.
Our guest is Dana Bash, chief congressional correspondent at CNN. And let's turn down to Kentucky. We were told that this could be Mitch McConnell's last stand, and it was going to be pretty close. But these latest polls, as you just mentioned, are showing Mitch McConnell and other Republicans pulling away. Is Kentucky looking like a solid win now for McConnell?
It is looking like a win for McConnell. Look, I think the fact that we're even talking about a tough race for Mitch McConnell in a favorable environment for Republicans, for Republicans, tells you everything you need to know about the real sentiment out there. And I saw this in Kentucky, I saw it in Iowa, I saw it in Kansas. It talks on all their houses. I mean, people are just disgusted with Washington, and I guess, who can blame them? They just think Washington is just not doing its job. And the reason McConnell was in trouble is because he's the leader of the Republicans in the Senate, and Allison Leonard Grimes, the Democrat there, was able to really put him on the hooks for a while as part of the problem. But look, Kentucky is still a very tough environment. President Obama, when he was popular still back in 2012, lost all but 4 counties there. So it was always tough. The fact that she did well at all, again, says a lot about the fact that there's just disillusionment with Washington in general, both parties.
When you're planning your election coverage, I know that you always pick out 1 or 2 places that you watch to get a sense of the early trend. I mean, a lot of questions have been raised about whether or not there's a genuine Republican wave that's going to take place. As we watch our election coverage early tomorrow, where would we begin to pick up if that's going to happen?
North Carolina, it would be my guess. If there's a Republican wave, they're going to win North Carolina. That is, I think, a great example for lots of reasons. One is North Carolina really is kind of a microcosm of the electorate more broadly. It is a state that the president won and then lost. It is a state where you do have an incumbent Democrat who is, she's not very popular. She's underwater, as many incumbents are when it comes to her favorability ratings. But she's been able to really fight back, and she's been a few points ahead in most polls. So if she, Kay Hagan is the incumbent I'm talking about, if she loses to the Republican speaker in the State House there, Tom Tillis, I think that's going to be telling.
What about the New Hampshire race that has gotten immensely tighter in the last few days?
It has. Look, Scott Brown, who moved north from Massachusetts after he lost his Senate seat there 2 years ago, was in double digits behind the incumbent there, Jeanne Shaheen. I was up there the week before last, and Scott Brown cannot speak a sentence. He can't even ask where the bathroom is without saying, Jeanne Shaheen votes for the president 99% of the time. And it's worked. It's worked because New Hampshire is a place where President Obama was popular. He did well there, and he is really unpopular, and people are just super disillusioned with the president there, and that is a big part of why Scott Brown has been able to do well. That is a place where candidates matter, in that Jeanne Shaheen, the incumbent, was a 2-term governor. She is very well known in the state. She goes back every weekend to every steak fry and ribbon cutting and Rotary Club meeting, and she is all about constituent services. Her approval rating is above 50%, which I think she's maybe the only incumbent Democrat maybe in the country to have that, and that could matter.
Turning it locally here to Virginia, Dana Bash, everything you just said to describe Shaheen up in New Hampshire, you could say about Mark Warner, I think, a very popular guy, former governor. And yet Ed Gillespie, who joined us earlier this morning on Mornings on the Mall, he says that he's narrowed it down to a 4-point lead based on his last poll. And we just found out that Warner canceled a Get Out the Vote rally that he was planning tonight in Loudoun County, one of those counties that is a bellwether for the state. What are you hearing about Virginia?
Well, it's funny. You asked me about early results and if there would be a wave. Obviously, Virginia. If Ed Gillespie could pull out a surprise win, it would be game over early, very likely. Virginia is an interesting place in that everybody thought, you guys know this, that Gillespie was getting in to sort of get his sea legs as being the principal and not the staffer, which he had been for so long, so successfully. And maybe to run for governor and to sort of to have a dry run of sorts. I don't know that he ever really thought he was going to be senator, so we'll see what happens. Look, Mark Warner is popular. He is well known, but he is an incumbent Democrat, and he is in some ways a local guy. And people are feeling the tension in Washington in their backyards, particularly as you mentioned in Loudoun County and the places. The suburban Washington areas of Virginia. He's also had some questions, and the Republicans jumped on about trying to help a staffer secure, some help, and so that certainly, I'm sure, has not helped, especially in an environment where people are just disgusted with politicians.
And Dana Bash, one thing that rings true in Virginia, as well as most of these states that we've just been mentioning that are sort of toss-ups or on the bubble or leaning one way or the other, is that Barack Obama has been nowhere to be seen. He had a pretty light schedule this weekend. What does that tell you?
Oh, I mean, it's typical for where he is in the polls. We saw the same thing when George Bush was president, and Democrats at that point were poised for a big wave in 2006 in George Bush's sixth year in office. Barack Obama did go to some blue states. He went to Connecticut to help the governor there. He went to Michigan, and he went to Rhode Island. And, look, at the end of the day, we're going to look and see whether keeping the president at bay was the right strategy. As you can imagine, people in the White House, Obama aides and supporters, think it was a mistake because even in red states, you need to get out the base, and he is still popular with the base.
All right, Dana Bash, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy Election Day Eve.
You too, thanks. It does feel like Christmas around this town, doesn't it?